Hi guys, welcome back to Plant Powered Fitness Munich. I thought I'd just do a video for you following up from a video that I did some time ago where I was talking about my journey with giving up alcohol. What I'll do is I'll put a link down in the comments so that you can see that original video where I talk about my journey with giving up alcohol, my reasons for giving up alcohol, etc. And as I say, I thought it would be quite useful at the moment to do a follow-up video about how I'm actually dealing with staying off of alcohol, staying off the booze, if you like, during very testing times that we're going through now for everybody. I mean, here in Germany, we've been in lockdown now we're going into our 5th month. And as I make this video, the lockdown has been extended to the end of March. So we started at the beginning of November and now coming right through to March. That's going to be 5 months of lockdown. And for a lot of people who have been dealing with issues with regards to addiction and so forth, this has been really testing on their resolve in terms of dealing with that. Not only for people who are in recovery from dependency on drugs or alcohol or whatever, but also people who have been under severe pressure actually turning to those things as a kind of a crutch to see them through the testing times that we're going through. So as I say, just to talk about my own personal experience, I have to say in advance, that I am not qualified to give advice on addiction, whether it be to alcohol or drugs or whatever. This is purely my own experiences. So, if you find yourself in a situation whereby you're really struggling, chemically dependent on whatever, or just struggling generally with mental health or whatever, please do seek professional advice. Don't just take my word for the way that I go about things. This is purely a personal experience, but I hope that it helps people in some way. I can honestly say that it hasn't really been too much of a problem for me during this period, because what I've done to combat the situation is I've kept myself extremely busy. I've been off of alcohol now for coming up to 2.5 years. I gave up in December 2018, and we've been in lockdown in total here in Germany, with little breaks in between, for about a year, because the lockdown started in March 2020. And to be honest, maybe there's been 2 or 3 occasions during that period where I've maybe been tempted to go back to alcohol. When I've had a particularly bad week, can't see the end of the situation coming along, the anxiety around not knowing what's going to happen. I've had quite challenging times as well, like many people, being self-employed, having my own business in tourism. I've got a tour operations business here in Munich as well as my fitness business. And the income from that went to zero overnight. I went from having the best year ever in 2019, having a tremendous amount of pre-bookings in the first quarter of 2020. And then when the first lockdowns were announced in March 2020, it was like a rug had been pulled from underneath my business, and my income went to zero, literally overnight. So if ever there were going to be challenging times, this was it. But I've managed to go right the way through until now, alcohol free. And I've used a few tactics in order to be able to do that. As I say, keeping busy is the most important thing. So what I did was, at the beginning of lockdown, I was kind of in the process of starting to apply for my German citizenship, which meant passing a couple of exams, a German language exam and also a citizenship test. So what I did was I resolved right at the beginning of the lockdown that I was going to dedicate 2 or 3 hours a day to study prior to taking my exams, which were set for July and August. So having that set routine was really, and having a goal was something really, really useful to help me avoid being lured back into the dark side, if you like, into drinking alcohol. So very important is to have a routine, and if you don't have a routine, to put one in place. The routine can be anything. It might not be passing an exam or getting a citizenship or whatever. It could be embarking on a fitness program and actually sitting down and writing out what the program's going to involve. It could be learning a musical instrument, learning the guitar. That's an ambition that I've had for a long time. Haven't got around to it yet. Still, the way the lockdowns are going, it may well be that I still get to fulfill that goal because can't see the end in sight. But learning an instrument, whether it's the guitar or any other instrument, taking up a new hobby is another way of dealing with things. And something else as well, which is really useful, I find, is to resurrect a hobby that you had when you were a kid that you've given up since. So, for instance, it might be just something very, very simple like bike riding. You know, if you used to ride around on your bike a lot when you were a kid, something that you found really fun, and you've given it up and you think, hang on a second, wouldn't it be great to take that back up again? It could be playing a sport, riding your bike. And what you find is the fun that you get from doing that diverts you away from the temptation of going down the route of drinking alcohol. Let's be perfectly honest about it here. Alcohol is a crutch. It's used to fill a space in your life, if you like. And I can speak from my own experience, you know, that right from when I started work when I was 16, it became part of my routine. Alcohol was involved with everything that I did. Socialising, going to watch football, to watch my team play football, dealing with highs in life and celebrating, dealing with lows in life as well. And I've dealt with those things as well, you know, personal loss and things like that, which lead you into drinking. So personally, and I'm sure this is the same for many people as well, I would use alcohol as a crutch for both celebrating and for consoling myself with things. So it was any extreme emotions, if you like. And then, of course, in between there, you've got the general socialising stuff. Going to football, you know, back in the day when I was in my 20s, back in the 1980s, it seems like a long time ago now, that was part of the routine. Off to football on a Saturday, I'd go and see my team Arsenal. It would start off at the Moriarty's bar in Baker Street, which was a little pub that used to be in the station in Baker Street. That would be pre-game drinks. Then you'd go off to the stadium. You'd find a pub to see your mates in around the stadium and have a few beers there. During the match, half-time, down to the concourse, buy another couple of beers. And then, of course, in the evening, you'd meet up with pals again in the city. Living in London was fantastic. Social life, beer on tap, had a whale of a time. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that people shouldn't drink. You're having a good time. I don't regret any of the drinking that I did, apart from the darker times when I was drinking. But, you know, if somebody had told me when I was in my 20s and 30s to stop drinking, I probably would have told them where to go. Because my social life and everything revolved around that, and the way that I dealt with emotions was to drink. That's why I stopped in the first place 2.5 years ago, is because it got to the stage where I thought, hang on a second, I've got everything that I want in life. I have a lovely family, I have a nice home, a business that I really enjoy. Why am I still drinking like I did when I was in my 20s and 30s? And, you know, to me anyway, I think that drinking is very much a young person's game. I think once you get over 40, you shouldn't really be having to do it, to be perfectly honest with you. If you can handle it and it's in moderation, no problem whatsoever. But if you're somebody like me who tends to take things to extremes, that would be the same when I was a kid growing up. You know, if I was playing football, I would give it absolutely everything. I would have to go I'd have to push the envelope with everything that I was doing, and I applied the same to drinking. It wasn't enough just to have a couple of beers. I would have to drink until, you know, last man standing kind of thing. And the same would go with eating when I was younger. You know, I'm still a little bit like that now. I couldn't open a packet of biscuits and just have 2 or 3. The packet would have to go. So I always had that kind of personality that leant towards extremes, and that's why I gave up in the first place, because it was getting a little bit too much. That pushing things to extremes can have a positive spin as well when you're trying to give up something like alcohol, because it means that if you can focus that dedication to giving up, that extreme attitude towards giving up, it actually gives you a much better chance of being successful. So you can actually spin the whole thing on its head and make that kind of personality, if you've got it, work for you. And that's what I've applied. So other things that I've used to actually avoid going back to old father booze, as we used to nickname it back in London. Definitely having a structured routine. I also threw myself into my businesses. So I started up YouTube channels and started to work on embellishing my businesses so that I got a structure, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this video clip. My fitness program, I actually sit down and tap into my phone what I'm going to be doing. What are my fitness goals for the next week? What am I looking at over the next month? What routine am I going to have for the next month? As I got towards the end of that month, it would be, okay, what am I going to introduce into the next month, which is going to take me up to the next level? So you're constantly looking forward to progressing. It ties in with the saying that I have for this channel, you know, onwards and upwards, keep moving forward, onwards and upwards. You're constantly trying to improve yourself. Another little technique that I use, which is very, very useful, is on the few occasions when I've been tempted to have alcohol. Say, for instance, I find one of the places which is really distracting is when you're in a supermarket and you go past the drink section. You know, when I was a drinker, I used to take myself over to the drink section and start to examine the wine bottles and the spirits bottles, convincing myself that I was a connoisseur, when the reality was that I was just looking at what was going to get me drunk as quickly as possible. You know, which wine had the strongest alcohol level would be my choice, not which was the tastiest. It would be which would get me drunk quicker. So what I do now is, if I'm in the supermarket and I find myself veering over towards the drink section, what I do is think to myself, you know, it might cross my mind, you know, would it be nice just to have a glass of wine this evening just to unwind? And then what I immediately do before I take any further action on that or get sucked into that mode of thinking is I immediately wind forward to what the scenario would be if I had that first sip of that bottle. And the scenario would be that the following morning I would wake up probably with a headache, feeling absolutely dreadful, and feeling ashamed of myself because I'd gone so far in giving up alcohol and then let myself down. So what I do is I make that jump, and immediately it sort of kind of kicks me into like a little punch in the face, if you like. It's like a little shock. Oh, I don't want to go there. I don't want to have to deal with that feeling. I wouldn't be able to live with myself. How long would it take me to get back on track again? You know, I might be so ashamed of myself for having let myself down that I might think, oh, well, I'll just have another bottle this evening just to kind of wipe away the memory of the fact that I'd let myself down. So I find that that's a very, very useful technique to avoid going back to the booze, if you like. The health aspects as well, you know, I mean, for me personally, I started to get blood pressure problems and cholesterol problems and things like that, and that's been sorted out since I've given up alcohol. So I've got this huge health benefit that I'm getting from not drinking alcohol, and I don't want to let that go. I just don't want to know about it now, because that would ruin all of that. And as I mentioned in the first video that I posted about giving up alcohol, for me personally, the huge and biggest reason is my family, my wife and children. I want to have the best quality time with them that I can during the last third of my life. I'm 58 years of age, coming up to 59 this year. And to me, it would be sad to think that I would go right through my life without having a decent period of time where I was completely clear of drinking and whatever. I often used to think to myself when I was a drinker, when I was in my 20s and 30s, in a quieter moment, I'd stop and think to myself, what would it be like? What could I achieve if I wasn't drinking? What could I have achieved in the last 2 days if I hadn't spent it recovering from that drinking session that I had on Saturday? You know, I didn't just used to go for one-day drinking sessions, guys. I would disappear for 2 or 3 days on end, having drinks and so forth, when I didn't have any responsibilities whatsoever. It would revolve around football, it would revolve around London nightlife and pubs. You know, I could probably name most of the pubs in London by the time I was 40. So it was very much ingrained in my way of life. But what it does show you is that even if you are that much of a dedicated drinker, if you like, you can give up. It is possible. The circle within which you mix is very, very important. You know, if your whole social life revolves around drinking and all your friends and so forth drink, it makes it much more difficult there can be some, if you're serious about giving up drinking, there can be some very hard decisions that have to be made in terms of the circles you're mixing in, because you often find if you hang out with people who drink with you, and there is a great camaraderie around all of that, let's be honest about it, sports teams in the past anyway used to use drinking as a social lubricant, to create a kind of camaraderie amongst teams. And especially amongst men, there's a great camaraderie that comes with drinking, and I can't deny that. I've been there, I understand that. But if you're serious about giving up your drinking, you'll often find that those people that you socialise with and drink with you often won't support your goal to give up drinking. They don't want to lose you. And they'll almost withdraw their friendship. It almost becomes like a bribery, well, if you're not drinking with us, don't want to know you kind of thing. And you have to ask yourself serious questions like, if somebody can't be my friend unless they're drinking with me, are they really a friend? Maybe it's time to go and find a new circle of friends that are going to support you and help you on your journey through life, if you like. So just a few little tips there, guys, about what I've been doing and how I deal with that situation. I hope it may be of some help for you. If you're having problems with alcohol, as I say, or drugs, I never dealt with drugs. Drugs was never an issue for me. I never went down that route. But any substance that people are dependent on, if you're having a real problem with it, as I mentioned right at the beginning, seek professional help. But if you're kind of like a regular drinker and you feel inspired by having a little chat about it, then that's great as far as I'm concerned. And if anybody wants to contact me through the comments if they're having problems with things like that, or just a little bit of general advice, and you're not looking for professional advice, as I say, if it's a chemical addiction or whatever, get that advice. But if it's just a general kind of, how did you do this or how did you do that? Got any tips for, how do you meditate or anything like that? That's an issue for me as well. Meditation, a great way of dealing with alcohol and addictions and so forth. So thanks for having a look at the video, guys. I hope you've got value from it, as I say. I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care now.